MIDDLEKAUFF! Hey, hey! Ham reporting for duty?
Another day, another dollar. Am I plugged in? You know what I think I need to do?
You sound good to me.
I know, but it's
Great
risky
scenery.
because I'm on turn Wi-Fi off.
Okay, you do that while I handle some business. What's up, everybody? Great to have you on the podcast. If you are watching this YouTube, great to see you on the tube. Hit that like button. That helps it out. Hit that subscribe button. That helps it out. We appreciate that. If you hate something we say, leave us a comment about it. We're open to the conversation, so thank you for all of that. If you're listening to this podcast, that's great too. Share it with somebody you love. Hats off to you. Share it with somebody you hate, whatever the case may be. Leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. You can leave us a mailbag question. Once the season gets going, things get hot and heavy. We've got to find a way to squeeze a mailbag in. So if you've been leaving a question, thank you. We'll try and circle back with you on that. And yeah, we got a lot to dive into today. Yeah, one love. John, we have to address the obvious story before we do anything else, which is that LeBron James is now part of the Bald Brotherhood.
I did see someone say that it might be the bald filter.
Might be the bald filter, or he might be Team Bald. How will you handle this at the next Bald Man meeting?
Yeah, struggle with that. You know, he's had a decade to come on over. And now that he's not cool anymore, like, let's face it, his star is dimmed. You know, I would say his approval level is dramatically lower than it once was. I don't know. I will not embrace. I'm still KD. You know, he's a little more sympathetic figure in my eyes, in a weird way. If he wanted to do it, we would welcome him. Tiger as well.
Gotcha.
Even though I don't think Tiger ever does that. Kevin. I don't know if Kevin ever does it either. LeBron didn't have a choice, guy. He was painting his head.
Well, this looks almost kind of fake.
I think it's fake.
It looks fake, but yeah, I don't know. He's invested a lot in it. It would be quite a pivot for him.
It would. He's held on for so long now to do it. It feels like he would have wasted some prime years playing. Don't you think?
Yeah, I mean, all the time he's probably spent 2 weeks in a resort in Turkey, like multiple times over the course of the last 10 years.
I also just think like Michael and Kobe, you know, RIP, like when they made the transition, it was a big move for their brand. Like, LeBron, it's too late, buddy. You play on a fucking team that can't even make the playoffs.
Green Glassful on the chat says, that's fake, boomers.
I know.
It's a damn shame. Fergus says, over under how much money went into that scalp? 7 figures? Yeah, I mean, I think you can pretty easily, your average civilian can easily drop 15,000, right?
Well, Haberman pays $5,000 for unlimited haircuts.
It was 2.
For 2 years?
4 years. Do the math.
Yeah, a lot of driving to him. How often do you get a haircut?
You know, we're shooting for once a week right now.
You go once a week?
17 minutes each way.
It's a lot of haircuts.
I mean, when they're free, you know.
That's true. You might as well take advantage of it.
Get one tomorrow. That's the lock of the week. We have a fade of the week. We got to get that in. We'll see. 0 for 2. You know, I was thinking about a John lock of the week. It's kind of like being a baseball player. You're 0 for 2. You don't start slamming baseball bats and throwing helmets in the dugout. You might come up to the bottom of the ninth. So we'll see.
That was a lot of money in a 24-hour period, not going to lie. I don't feel as bad in the night game, given that we had an injury to a show friend.
Jake Hayner.
It made me feel a lot better about, like, whatever, money. Yeah, lose $750 on a game where the guy has a high ankle sprain. The Sunday was, I was not happy. The Panthers, obviously, that was our bet. The Commanders, I mean, I lost my confidence, guy. I lost my confidence as a gambler. I look at the slate and I go, I don't even know where to start. I'm down to do a fade of the week. I think we both agree on the fade of the week.
The problem with the fade of the week.
Why are we going to fade Mahomes and Andy? I mean, is that really good business?
Well, I mean, to me, the fades of the week would be the Colts +7, right? It's like, what is the?
I thought we were fading the Chiefs.
No, I know. I'm just saying. You're saying actually take the Chiefs.
No. I was saying like most people are going to take the Chiefs in that game, right, to kick
Yeah.
their ass. I would
That's what
say
I'm saying.
we would fade. Yeah.
So the obvious picks that would be the most painful picks would be the Colts +7 against the Chiefs, or to take
it's in Indy, right?
games in Indy, yeah,
Yeah.
or to take the Dolphins +5.5 against the Buffalo Bills, aka the 2005 USC Trojans.
Yeah. It's a good question. I don't know. I see. I don't like doing fades.
Yeah, well, I say you go a 1 on the side, John. That's the best fade I got. Okay, John, before we go any further, let's tell the people about our friends, our sponsor. As our buddy Devin at Tito said, he's like, Tito's is for emotions. I don't know if they're making that the official national ad campaign slogan, John, but I think you coined that, and it may be the emotion, the Tito's ad slogan for gambling right now for ham.
Yeah.
Tito's handmade vodka, John. Number 1, the original craft vodka in this country. In 1995, Tito Beverage built his very own distillery, put his life savings in, just like the ham lock of the week. And since then, he's won the unanimous judges double choice double gold medal at the World Spirits Competition, the Chairman's Trophy for the world's best vodka tonic, and many others. Too many to list. It is the personal favorite of Haberman and Milko.
I think every time I have this drink and it's done right, I just go, God, this is a good drink. Next time you're out and about and you need a little juice. And, the older I've gotten, like, I don't do Red Bull in Tito's. Not that, I know some people do, but I don't do Red Bull in my cocktails. I will go, though, the espresso martini with Tito's. And when it's done right, that thing melts in your mouth. Oh. And then you'll just go, give me another. Give me another. I love it. We had some of
those at the Yacht Club. #blue collar.
Oh, the Yacht Club. Fantastic. How about at Primo's in Danville? It's on tap. Espresso martinis on tap with Tito's. So if you guys are in Danville, next time you're in Danville, espresso martinis on tap.
That's a freebie.
Yeah, exactly. No one's paying for that. That's a personal thing. I'm not recommending. I'm just saying if you're in the area, there are rules we got to follow here. You're in the area driving around East Bay,
If you happen to walk in. For rest in peace videos and more, go to titosvodka.com. Distilled and bottled in Austin, Texas. 40% alcohol by volume, namely 80 proof. Crafted to be savored responsibly.
You think DeChambeau needed some Tito's after he got cut his eye with the rope?
I can't see. Shit. Better video this week. DeChambeau going down or Russ running around telling, runner pass. Let him know. Runner pass. Hey, 9-6. Runner pass. Hey, 9-6.
I got to be honest. Our buddy Devin sent it to us. Obviously, we had many people, I think, DM it probably to us. That is like one of the least cheesy things. Now, his scale is so high. I just think he thinks he's doing the right thing. It's not that weird to be on the sideline, right, when the defense is on and scream, run.
No, everybody at Clovis West High School does it when the team's on defense.
But I would imagine some colleges do it. Random guys in the pros do it,
Yeah. Generally, the guys not in uniform, probably do it.
You don't think
coach is probably
like screaming at the backup defensive lineman who also rotates. He's like, Russ, I'm fucking catching my breath here, drinking a goddamn Gatorade. Shut up.
I've never seen Saban just like hands on knees. Pass. You'd think he'd yell it, detail guy.
It's not the craziest thing, right? To like the guy knows.
It's not, but who is reacting to that? That's the part I've never quite understood. Like,
well, the problem is
running with the receiver.
Well, I remember being at Fresno State, and when I was on the sideline, and if you scream "run" and it's play action, you're like, you just kind of move to the side.
You just go, pass.
Hell of a fake, coach. Take me out.
RPO. RPO. I'd get really specific. That's the guy that I would want. It's like
7-yard out.
Yep. Bubble screen.
You better be right on that shit.
The guard's pulling.
That's why Russ just kept it very generic. Runner pass.
I appreciate Russ being locked.
He was down.
We already mentioned some of our bets, John, but we are also sponsored by DraftKings. New customers right now, you could bet $5 on any NFL team to win and get $200 in free bets if they do. Again, you bet just $5 on any NFL team to win. You can just bet on the Niners to win this week. If they win, you get $200 in free bets at the DraftKings Sportsbook when you sign up with the code HAM.
Yep. Plus, with same game parlays, guy, you can combine multiple bets. How about this? Maybe Colts and maybe Dolphins? Or is that getting risky? You know, the parlays, you can make some good coin.
Go Colts, Dolphins parlay. That's a great idea.
I like that. DraftKings has been around for a while, so you know your funds are safe and can be withdrawn whenever you want.
That's right. Go to DraftKings, go to the DraftKings Sportsbook. Use the code HAM. Minimum age and eligibility restrictions apply. Just check out the show notes for details, and we'll get our lock of the week later this week.
Yeah, download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now. New customers use the promo code HAM, receive $200 in free bets if their team wins after placing a $5 pregame wager. That's promo code HAM only at DraftKings Sportsbook. Do it now.
All right. Go check it out, everybody. And, we'll see what kind of parlays are. Kansas at home, 7.5 against Duke. Kansas 3-0.
Coach foot already out the door.
Lance Leipold on his way to Nebraska. Some people want him going to Nebraska. Check with my sources on the staff, John. UCLA 21.5. Maybe you take that cover at Colorado this week. See how much you enjoy that.
Go Bucks.
Go who?
Colorado. Go Buffs. Buffs.
You know what? I don't hate the idea of Tampa, the Bucks, against the Packers this week.
Actually, I kind of like the Packers.
Sammy Watkins, the Packers' leading receiver last week. 4 targets.
Randall Cobb. The Bucks' leading receiver is now suspended. You see that?
Well, their top 3 leading receivers are not available, but Cole Beasley is here to save the day, John. And as long as Tom Brady thinks he's Edelman or Amendola, I don't really see how they're going to skip a beat. They won't skip a beat, You
never know. Walker got anything left?
Yeah. Anyway, he's on the Dolphin staff.
Yeah, you never know.
So
come out of retirement.
Not part of that game. Monday Night Football. I saw you had a great tweet yesterday. You said, I don't want to be a complainer because there's plenty of that on this app, but I don't love the Monday night game being doubled up. 2 games basically being at the same time. Staggered by like 30 minutes, but essentially being at the same time. Not a doubleheader.
No. Right. A doubleheader, a game ends and a new one starts, correct?
Yeah, that's right. So I went back and looked at the doubleheader from a couple of years ago. Just picked the week 1 doubleheader. The ratings, like the first game, the second game, what happens. The second game starts around 7:30 Pacific time, so 10:30 Eastern. The highest rated part of that second game is the start of the game. The first 15 minutes of the game is the highest rated part of the game because it's 10:15, 10:30. People go to sleep. East Coast is out, and you're basically you lose like a whole time zone, right? So I watched that game last night and thought, I think
which game?
Well, both games. I think ESPN's experimenting here to see if they could kind of double up instead of doing double headers, have 2 games on, and in theory, the whole nation could watch, either game, whichever, or flip back and forth between both. Well, the games were bad, so it was not a great experiment because it ended up rating lower than the last Monday Night Football doubleheader did.
Yeah, that would suck if this experiment comes to fruition. So I hope that failure, I just like one game. I said the previous week, Monday Night Football, thank you, Jesus, for whoever developed Monday Night Football. I still haven't quite got to the bottom of it. Pete Rozelle, Lamar Hunt, one of those types. They deserve a lot of credit. A one-off game where it's very easy to consume. I thought it was a little too difficult yesterday. With Josh Allen, who's one of the superstars right now in sports, I want to take him in, but I can't because I'm also like the Eagles-Viking game felt bigger in a weird way because that thing was already a blowout, and I got lost in the shuffle. Didn't like it.
Tell him? No. Why am I suddenly Rune Arledge? Rune Arledge. That's the guy.
Yeah, I would hug that guy, but I think he would even tell you, listen, I understand streaming. I understand you got a lot of television options, to put different games on different, just keep it to the one, just ride. There is nothing like Thursday night, Sunday night, and Monday night. You just take in the one game, guy.
Yeah. There's something to be said for, I want to watch the one game and not feel like I'm totally on the clock. I got to be like back and forth. What's going on here? What's going on there? We got a snap over here. We got a penalty over here. What happened?
Couldn't even take the dog out to piss because there's no halftime.
Let me just chill and watch this game. Can I just
agree.
chill and watch this game?
Agree.
I don't want shots every day of football. Sunday is for just a bender. But Monday, let me have just a cold one and chill. I don't need shots every day. And it was stressful for me. The one thing they did when I was watching the first game, the Bills game, then the Eagles game started and they got the red zone. So ESPN put them split screen, which was a reminder that the only thing a sports fan has wanted, as long as I've been a sports fan, is just the ability to go. I don't know if it's the networks. I don't know if it's the cable providers. I don't know if it's the televisions that prevent the technology that prevents us from doing that. Although I think YouTube TV, not a sponsor, now lets you do just like split screen games or quad box. I know DirecTV's lets you do that. You can do it on your, streaming, right? Like you just got the Sunday ticket. I've got it. You can stream multiple games. You can put like 3 games on the screen, 4 games on the screen, whatever, right? We can never do that on the television. I just want to do that on the television.
You can?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
I just want to do that on the television. I don't know why are they, remember for a minute, picture, some of you might be too young to remember, there was a thing called picture in picture where you could like have a picture and then a smaller picture. And I've never got it to work, and I don't think it existed. People just stopped even trying. But you need it. You need it. And I want it. We want it. The consumer wants it. I guess YouTube, it's coming soon. But okay, so doubling up the game.
Yes. Staggered. I'd be fine with 2:30 kickoff, 5:30 kickoff.
Doubleheader. Yeah. But the problem with the doubleheader is you kind of get a geographical constraint because you could only put like West Coast teams in the second game, right?
Well, think about this upcoming week. In theory, it could be a terrible game. I know the Giants are 2-0, but I've watched them a couple times. Not a great watch. Cowboys got Cooper Rush. Actually, not a terrible watch because Micah Parsons is pretty good. But that game kind of sucks. But you know when it doesn't suck? When it's fucking Monday Night Football. You know why? Because we all watch. So just let it be by itself.
That's a good point. You kind of reduce the value of both games when you split them up instead of making it one big center stage.
Exactly. Now, Bills-Titans, even though it felt like that was the second game last night in a weird way, because it was. I mean, it was on ESPN with the second crew. Joe and Buck were.
But it started first.
Yeah. That game, if that game would have been a one-off, it would have felt huge.
Yeah.
But it felt a little different.
It's funny. When it started, I thought the wrong game was on ESPN and ABC. But then I realized, well, the Philly market probably you could put Philadelphia on it just I don't know the logic of why one game was where and the other game was where. You know what I mean?
Because I think the Philly-Minnesota game, if there hadn't been a doubleheader, was the true Monday night game.
Gotcha.
This was, again, haven't seen the logic, but just an add-on.
But coming into the season, wouldn't the Bills-Titans felt bigger? Or you think Vikings-Eagles feels bigger?
Well, I just think that was the game,
Yeah. I'm just asking you, what was a more worthy standalone Monday night game?
If the Titans hadn't traded A.J. Brown and lost their star pass rusher that game, they were the 1 seed, the Bills like the 3 seed, that would have made sense. But do you agree, like just watching the two it felt like Minnesota, Philly was a little bigger?
Yeah, partly maybe ABC.
Partly the Titans. The Titans brand
Cousins
doesn't quite pop.
Big time. When I see Kirk Cousins, I think P.T. Peer.
Yeah, so does Kyle.
God, did you watch? Cousins was... I don't know if I texted you this or I just thought it out loud last time. Like, could you imagine?
Kawakami, I was reading his article. He said he's a free agent, I think, in 24. So you never know. Keep an eye. Makes me throw up in my mouth.
I will not keep an eye. I've kept enough eyes.
Yeah.
I've seen it enough. What'd you think of, Jalen Hurts was a guy who has, I think probably a lot of people, myself included, I was not bullish on Jalen Hurts as a like true NFL starter when he came into the league at quarterback. Somebody hit me last night on Twitter. They were like, it's been obvious. Look at such a high level player he was. But, he got replaced in college. A lot of guys have. So that in and of itself is
by a guy that was drafted 5 overall. I mean, he's a polarizing player, but Tua was, superior player.
And then he went to Oklahoma and had a really good year. And he looks really good. I mean, he looks fantastic. Part of it is how he's playing. Part of it is just the basic way that he looks. He throws a beautiful ball. He runs with confidence. He's a very smooth runner. He's a nimble runner. He's an impressive guy.
Very confident player. I made a lot of jokes last night because Jalen Hurts carries the ball a shitload on social media streets. And one thing in 2021 that the Eagles did for Jalen Hurts, because he was an inaccurate quarterback and he struggled to throw the football, is that about early on, I don't know the exact date when they made the move, but they basically transitioned their entire offense to resemble what he did with Lincoln Riley. And while Lincoln Riley and Caleb and those guys are throwing it a lot, I think a lot of people have this misconception that he's kind of like air raid. When you think just like throw the ball, spread it out. He runs the ball a lot, or did at Oklahoma, right? When he had star running backs and P. Ryan, Mixon, Trey Sermon, like running backs were a big part of his offense. And obviously the quarterback running with Kyler, with Jalen, have played huge roles in his offense. And that's what the Eagles did last year. And they ran him all the time with the running backs. And they ran a pretty, quote unquote, collegiate level offense that I see a lot of, on the social media streets with the Niners, people complaining that Kyle did with his quarterback. Even though Jalen, as a player, much more experienced playing at Alabama and then Oklahoma, and then Wally Pipping. Well, actually, he didn't Wally Pip. He literally just beat him out because Carson Wentz sucked. He replaced him, and he was just a better player. And ultimately, they got that year of running him. Now, he's a very instinctive player. Like you and I talked about this yesterday when we were there. You cannot watch Jalen, not even talking about how he's improved as a passer, but just as a football player. It comes very natural to Jalen Hurts, right? Just moving around with the football. It feels like a natural movement when he's scrambling or he's running. Why? He's been doing that his entire life, and he's very comfortable doing that. He did it against Alabama players in practice to now the Eagles in practice, and it works. But while they did this, clearly this year he came back and proved to them that, like, hey, I'm a much better thrower. And what did they do? They went out and traded for A.J. Brown. So now he has 2 wide receivers.
Can I interject for 1 second?
Go ahead.
I mean, they traded for A.J. Brown, and then he also became a much better thrower, right? It could be that it worked that way.
True, but I mean, he was hitting Devontae last night.
I'm just saying that, his receivers are gotten a lot better, infinitely upgraded when you add A.J. Brown. I mean, we watched the Titans last night. They looked awful without A.J. Brown.
Yeah, they look terrible.
Anyway, but it doesn't matter.
Fantastic player.
Whatever. No one ever goes, you're 68% completion guy, but you've got good receivers. It doesn't matter how you do it.
100%. So whether AJ's on the team or not, like, he clearly is just throwing the ball right now with more confidence. And they got here by running a quote unquote remedial collegiate offense early on in his career. And they are transitioning out of it, as he's proving with improved players on the outside, right? To be a more competent thrower. So it's almost like teams will put training wheels on a guy that they believe in to just ultimately get to where you can remove the training wheels and let them ride the bike.
I feel obligated to play somewhat devil's advocate here a little bit, in that putting training wheels on the guy doesn't mean you believe in him. It just means this is our best option right now, right? Let's see what happens.
Okay, you rephrase it that way. Put training wheels on the offense, because that's the only way to get the bike to the destination.
Yeah.
And it did. It got them to 9 wins, and they made the playoffs. But remember, in the playoff game, because against Tampa, you can't just run it against Tampa Bay. And that's going to be interesting this week, Tampa against Green Bay. What does Green Bay want to do a lot? They just ran for 200 yards against the Bears. That's kind of their offense. Run those guys and then throw off there. So Jalen couldn't throw against them, and they got housed. I know technically they kind of had this fake comeback, but they got worked in that game. It does feel, watching him early on this season, because of
his third year in the league,
improving, third year in the league. But remember, he kind of essentially redshirted as a rookie. He got to play a little at the end when Carson Wentz got kicked out and became the full-time starter as a second-year player. And as a second-year player with a lot of collegiate work, was nowhere near good enough as a passer. And still, I mean, obviously I'm comparing the Trey Lance situation. Trey Lance has an infinitely stronger arm than Jalen. Like, Jalen does not have a strong arm. Trey is a much more physically gifted passer, but clearly Jalen's accuracy, he's a third year, Trey's a second year.
You say that. I don't know if I would have felt that way. But I'm basing that off Jalen throws, I think, a really nice deep ball. Maybe you see it. Where does it show up? Does it show up for you there, or it shows up for you in
Yeah, I mean, Trey can throw the deep ball
throws.
for it. I just think he's got, let's just say pick a number. Trey's throwing 90. He has a 95-mile-an-hour fastball. Jalen's probably 92.
Yeah. But I feel like
I know the Eagles
Eagles
don't view his arm as like
an
plus.
Yeah. Interesting. I think part of this too, and Troy Aikman said it last night at the end of the broadcast, because that game on Monday night for Jalen Hurts was a fantastic game, right? It was a great game. It was like, it wasn't Tua's game today, but it was one
of the highlights of his young career, right?
And Troy's thing at the end of the game was, okay, He's got to keep doing it. Let's just see. Like, this league is about doing it over and over and over and over again.
Cowboy hater.
Cowboy hater. Maybe that's what it is. I mean, 30, what was he? He was 26 of 31. That's 84% for 333, a touchdown and a pick. Week 1 against the Lions, he was 18 of 32, which is 56%. So, he's played 2 games. One was not good. One was really good.
How many rush attempts for the young man? Because when I watch Jalen Hurts, I go, they are relying on his legs still a lot.
So
17 in the first game, correct?
Well, PFF gives us like designed run, like run plays versus scrambles. So he's had 15 total. He had 8 in the first game and 7 last night.
Like a zone read or a run.
So it can either be like a called run. It can be a sneak. It can be a zone read that you keep, that type of thing. So those were his. I gotta find his scrambles. So he's basically split it. He's got 14 total scrambles this year and 15 designed runs this year.
So he has ran past the line of scrimmage, designed or scrambled almost 30 times.
That's right. Yep. The first game he did it 17 times, and then last night he did it 12 times.
Which clearly he's improved a lot as a thrower. I would say even from last year, his best skill, which is, I would say, one of the better skills in the NFL at quarterback, like his running ability is pretty potent. Correct?
Yeah, I would say very potent. Like it seems to me when he runs, it's kind of like I'd put it in the Kyler. I don't know if the game slows down when Josh runs. Josh Allen, you know what I mean? But it feels like the game slows down when Kyler runs for Kyler. It feels like the game slows down for Jalen when Jalen Hurts runs. Do you agree with that? Like when Josh runs, it feels like he's just trying to get point A to point. As far as I can go is where I'm going.
Yeah.
Josh Allen.
He's like a Hummer.
Jalen Hurts is like not in a rush, right? Kyler is not in a rush. Kind of the way Russell used to be.
Yeah.
Especially behind the line of scrimmage, like not in a rush. And I would say that is dangerous. I don't know if you saw the stat.
He's kind of got, in a weird way, they're different people, some younger Russell Wilson vibes. Russell had a more powerful arm.
But it's the body, I think. It's like the compact body.
Yeah, compact body, very under control. He never looks like a shitty play. He just kind of hops back up. They really like his just confident demeanor and not in a cocky way, but like an inner belief that they kind of fell in love with early on. And that's, when the Wentz thing happened, like he was just ready. And last year, even through the ups and downs, it was like pretty unfazed. And you think about it, like, why would he be unfazed? Who taught him? I don't know, Saban. I mean, there is something to be said, like learning at that school, right?
Well,
just
remember the
video,
at Alabama, Lincoln also, and you remember the video of him squatting 600 pounds or whatever it was that
was
viral?
in Oklahoma, right?
Yeah, I think we'll get forgotten about that video is, he hadn't played a game at Oklahoma yet. Like he was still really new at Oklahoma. The whole team gathered around him, cheering for him, watching him do that, right? So in some ways, he really stepped into a good spot because Carson Wentz's MO was not guy who the whole team stands around and supports.
Well, do you remember part of his Alabama career that the way the chapter basically ended was, didn't Tua get hurt and he had to come back in the game? Remember that in the Final Four?
You're saying Tua got hurt, so he got
replaced.
Right. Yes,
he got replaced.
That's right.
And he was the backup, but something happened to Tua. He comes in, he leads them.
Was that the year Tua got his hip ripped, or was that the
no?
Next year
that was Mac Jones. So it was the
right.
previous year when Tua became the starter, and Jalen was the backup, but he handled it like a pro. And then something happened to Tua either in the SEC championship game or the Final Four, the first game. Jalen comes in, they're losing, and leads them to a couple touchdown drives, and it's awesome. And I'm pretty sure Tua then even played in the national championship game because that would have been against Clemson, the one Trevor Lawrence beat him in. It was the SEC championship game, against Georgia.
Thank you, Joe.
Might have been Florida. I forget. I mean, it's just...
So is Jalen Trey or Jimmy? I can't tell from that analogy. He's both.
Yeah.
Both guys.
Well, he's not as. I mean, Jalen doesn't possess the physical skills to ever get drafted as high as Trey. Jalen's physical skills from a thrower were viewed Jimmy-ish why he went in the second round. Because he, as a runner, honestly, where I was wrong, I thought like, hey, I don't think this guy can play quarterback. I've watched him throw at Oklahoma. I knew a lot of buddies that did. They didn't like him that much in the NFL. But his running skills, like, could this guy just be an NFL running back? Just like a starting NFL running back? Because clearly he is a dominant runner of the football. Dominant.
Yeah.
Like, I mean,
that'll get you dragged on the internet, John. Watch out, Bill Polian. Was that his take?
It was Lamar. It was Lamar. But Lamar was much more highly thought of than this guy as a thrower.
Yeah, I mean, Lamar's a first-round pick.
32, though.
Well, I understand. I'm just saying, like,
this guy was much more polarizing in the sense of a lot of people did not think he was a good player in college.
Yeah.
Relative.
They thought he was limited.
Yeah, I mean, obviously he's a good college player. You know what I mean? From a prospect standpoint.
Yes.
You don't start at Alabama and Oklahoma. He's had a pretty fascinating career.
His football life is good.
Because in a weird way, he was written off at the highest level, a little Burrow style, but he was playing.
Yeah, exactly. Guys transfer like Burrow or Baker or Kyler. Did Kyler transfer?
Yeah, he transferred from A&M.
Yeah. But that's before they played.
Yeah.
Jalen had led a team to the national championship game, in part, Well, let's talk about it from a Josh Allen perspective. Because that has been the comp that a lot of people have used. We've talked about the similarities or the things that you hope to project on Trey that Josh Allen may have. And then from a rushing standpoint, Josh Allen's numbers have been used, as have others. But here's the numbers from, again, PFF breaks down the scrambles versus just the designed runs. Doesn't differentiate between, QB sneaks where the only run option on the play is the quarterback sneak or an RPO or a zone read, whatever. But here it is for Josh Allen. We're in season 5. Take out season 5. It's only been 2 games, which is tough because, Trey's only played in 4 games. So Josh Allen's played as many years as Trey Lance has started games, which is part of, I don't love using numbers for that reason, but the sample size is small. But anyway, so his rookie year, Josh Allen ran 5% of the time by design. On the balance of his career, it was almost 8%. It was 7%. Last year it was 5.5%. So Josh Allen has run the ball about 6% of the time by design, not counting scrambles. Trey Lance, not a lot of games here. 179 snaps last year, 84 snaps this year. Last year was 15% QB runs. This year was 14% QB runs. It was 12. It was 3 this past week, and 9 in week 1. So that number is obviously big. It's more than double Josh's number as a percentage. So that's been used as an example that Kyle was at a disproportionate level putting Trey Lance in harm's way. So what do you think of that? Let's start there.
Well, the recent numbers, like the last year or even the last 2 years, Josh has become a potent thrower of the football. Wouldn't you say? I mean, last year he was an MVP candidate. So his most valuable skill as a player is one of the most valuable skills in the league, him throwing the football.
I actually think it feels like we've all kind of dived into these numbers over the last 3 days since Trey got hurt. One of my takeaways reading it is like, if I were a Bills fan, I would kind of wonder out loud, my guy is such a good thrower. Do we need to do this stuff with him? Or can we kind of leave that stuff behind, only break it out when we really have to? I remember Justin Herbert's year at Oregon, not to get us too far off track here, but I think Marcus Arroyo, the offensive coordinator, Mario Cristobal, they've got a little heat at the time because they weren't really using Justin Herbert. People felt like they weren't using his skills. But what they did, if you might remember this, John, in the Pac-12 championship game against Utah, all of a sudden they started running him. So they kind of kept that back because they didn't want to. He'd been hurt a couple times. They didn't want to get him hurt. And then in the title game, when the championship was on the line, all of a sudden here came Justin Herbert RPOs out of nowhere. Justin Herbert bootleg runs out of nowhere. and it changed the whole game. They won the championship because of that.
Didn't they win the Rose Bowl with him running in a touchdown?
Yeah, they won the Rose Bowl with him running also on a touchdown. You're right. So I know I'm taking off track from Trey here, but I actually have kind of thought, if you're Josh Allen, if you're a Bills fan, like, man, Josh is such a good thrower. Is this really necessary? But anyway, keep going.
Yeah, I'm not. If your quarterback can really throw, that would be something to bring up. But I think my Jalen, thinking of guys like young Lamar, running the football is going to be one of their more potent skills when they are working out how to throw the football at an NFL level. And I think that was question marks for Josh too early in his career. I would say he proved by the end of his second year. Now he got to play a lot, like you said. He started immediately, gets to play, gets to work through it.
They went 6-10 his rookie year.
This gets back to these games mattered, and they just lost. Like, part of this, the context of this was like, what just happened the previous week? 19-10. They scored 10 fucking points. And well, why did they struggle? Well, once Elijah Mitchell got hurt, what could happen? They couldn't run the ball, and then they had to throw. And what happened? Couldn't really throw. It's like, well, it was a driving rainstorm. Well, the other guy threw 2 touchdowns. Well, MIDDLEKAUFF, one play was a broken play. Well, yeah, he pulled the play out of his ass. That's part of the quarterbacks. Josh Allen does it. Mahomes does it. Justin Herbert does it. Lamar or Kyler. Part of being a potent athlete at the quarterback position is being able to pull things out of crevices of your body. I mean, that's why you get drafted really high. Ultimately, I'm as big of a Kyler hater as there could be. I will never dispute that guy doesn't terrify you 4th and 1 game on the line. What happens? He beat you. That stretch of plays the other day to score the touchdown with his legs and then the 2-point play is like.
Well, did you see the stat on the 2-point on the play he made with his legs?
The best part is there's also a delay of game in the middle of it.
I know, but he ran 89 yards on that play. The play where he got out of the Max Crosby.
I heard someone say it was 20-second play.
All I know is
it doesn't feel that long, but it was pretty long.
I saw a clip that was like, if Pat Summerall and John Madden called this play. It was Caliendo.
I just think part of the issue is you and we talked about this yesterday and we ended up not talking about it. We were going to save it till today. It's like the word I keep seeing is stop running quarterback power. They have not been running quarterback power. Quarterback power or quarterback sweep is a design. There are no other options, right? When you run sweep or a power to a running back, you're handing the ball to the guy. Outside zone, right? It's a famous Shanahan play. There's one option in that play. Quarterback runs, hands it off, he stretches it and picks a lane. They are running zone reads where there are several options. And that is my guy, on the internet streets yesterday, a lot of bullets flying as I'm being sarcastic. And my guy PFF Steve, former Giants minor leaguer,
Alizolo,
he's like, wait, are people actually making a big deal about this? And I was like, well, people would be strong on social media streets, yeah. And he's like, for running read option counters with the quarterback, like, do they watch the NFL? Because Kyle's been pretty defensive with this, right? The last two. Yep. Do you guys watch football? And I do agree. Like, are we not watching these fucking games of these running quarterbacks? How do we keep asking these questions? Because also, Trey is choosing to keep the ball, which I'd argue a couple times wrong decisions. Like, I think you and I were just talking about one thing that was bullish on Trey with his North Dakota State offense is they ran a lot of zone reads, and he was very confident with it all. And then you watch him in the NFL, it feels like he's yanking the wrong time. He's doing this, he's doing that, when he should be, well, the defensive end, he's reading that guy. Well, part of it is being instinctive. We talked about this the last couple of days, having a feel. Well, yeah, I should not give here, but no chance this guy touched Ray and he walks into the end zone. You watch Jalen. How often we sat down with Sirianni, and Sirianni's not even calling the plays, like his other little minion kind of. No, Gannon's a defensive coordinator. They have some other offensive coordinator that I've heard is pretty good. But when you run a zone read play with
Steichen.
Yeah. People are like, this guy's stud. With Jalen, or I think if you ask Harbaugh with Lamar, just the zone read concepts from the moment they got there. How often does he not make the right decision? And even when you've coached him to do something, does he make the right decision? You're like, he shouldn't have done that, but he knew and it worked. Because part of football is, I don't know, make a play. Isn't that one thing coaches always say? Listen, this is the construct of the play, but sometimes we got to adapt on the fly, not be a robot. And it felt like, which I understand, he's so young, everything was going so fast. And the decisions on just the zone read, which for a lot of these guys, Kyler, Lamar, obviously Jalen, we've talked a lot with Kaepernick, it's the easiest part of the sport for them. Like their deal is like, I got to become a better passer, I got to be a more accurate passer. But that, I can hang my hat on that early on, and we can build off that. Then Kyle tries to do that, and everyone freaks the fuck out like he's got Peyton Manning. It baffles me. It honestly makes no sense. You're using all these stats. It's like, well, run up the gut. No, he's choosing to keep, and on some of these, he's making the wrong decisions. So it's like, what I would be fascinated, they will never say this, and it feels like we're being so negative on the guy. We're just acknowledging that it was not going as hopeful as the projection, as smoothly with the basic element of what we thought was going to be his game, just the zone read stuff. We all knew the passing. I mean, it's a work in progress for most guys. Last year, Trevor Lawrence was all over the map. Like, no problem with that. But it's like, wait, I'd be fascinated if you sat down with Kyle and even McDaniel last year when some of those plays, like, he should have given it this time. He shouldn't. And it makes sense. You got Chandler Jones flying up. That guy moves a little quicker than the outside backer from Weber State or South Dakota State. And it felt like the speed of the game. I pushed back. You were on this from the beginning. And I was hopeful. I was like, I think he's just figuring out. But you realize when you're playing playoff level games, and every game for the Niner matters, you can't, the kind of pitter pattering, because that is one thing these other running quarterbacks, it never feels like Kyler or Lamar. From the moment they started playing, even Fields running around, like the one thing they immediately have is just like their athletic ability and their speed. And that's where everyone's like, well, he's not as good of an athlete as those guys. Well, that was what was promoted. That's where I think this whole thing's kind of becoming limbo.
We watched his college tape. His college numbers are productive as a runner. They're very good as a runner. But I think a couple things I'll push back on or respond on. I said last week I thought 13 carries. Now, not all of them were obviously design runs. 9 of them week 1 was too many. I think part of the challenge here is that we're using these Trey numbers before we really have a legitimate sample size on him, right? But if they were going to run him this many times per game for 17 weeks, I think it's reasonable to say he wasn't going to make it 17 weeks. And I do think that was too much, especially if we take what you just said, which is that he doesn't look comfortable as a runner. Well, if we're going to give Nick Sirianni and the Eagles a lot of credit for figuring out what their quarterback, Jalen Hurts, is most comfortable with and does well, and having him do that stuff, then I think it's fair to question, is Trey comfortable as a runner? Because if he's not, maybe that puts you in harm's way being uncomfortable as a runner. And that's been my belief from the beginning, is that he's not a totally comfortable NFL runner, and that running him puts him in compromising positions, and that you're actually not doing what's best for the team.
Which is a fact, like a known fact now. He gets put in compromising positions when he runs because he's not comfortable in space.
Right.
We saw Isaiah Simmons year 1, this thing year 2. He kind of hesitates.
So Kyle's evaluation then, and this is, I saw
okay, don't run him, then do what though?
No. Well, I was going to say, hold on. It was just Richard Sherman said yesterday. Did you see this on his podcast?
Missed it.
Basically, I think I'll paraphrase. I think they're a better team right now with Jimmy. Not a dramatic take, not a wild take. I tried to find the video, so if I'm misquoting him a little bit, someone give me the real quote. But I couldn't find the video before we started the podcast. But I do think Kyle's evaluation clearly, and this is where, and maybe it's grasping at straws. It sounds a little crazy. Would Kyle have run him that way if he didn't have Jimmy Garoppolo? Because if you don't have Garoppolo as the backup, then maybe the evaluation is like, all right, what is best for him? What is best for the team? But the number one thing we need is to not have Brock Purdy or Nate Sudfeld playing in games. So we'll give up a little bit of his effectiveness to make sure that he's just on the field because he's still better than my other options. I don't know. But I do think at the end of the day, what you were going to need from him was to be able to throw the football effectively. And you put at risk his ability to develop that skill by running him a lot. Now, maybe you run him a lot, nothing ever happens, and you get lucky. Like I said, I'd be a little concerned about how much Josh Allen runs, but Josh is a more confident runner. It feels like he's a more physical runner, even though Trey's big. And maybe Trey would have developed that understanding when to take a guy on, when to slide, even though sliding can get you hurt too. There's not a debate. Like, you are in harm's way more if you run the ball more. My question for Kyle would be, is what we've seen through 2 weeks, because the Bears game, I mean, it's in a driving rainstorm. So maybe he was going to run the ball that much. Then Elijah Mitchell gets hurt. Then Ty Davis Price gets hurt. So maybe he was going to run the ball more. I don't know. Like, his running backs are dropping like flies. Like, we know that Debo's in harm's way when he runs the ball, right? Because Debo's in big collisions. Although I know Kyle said the other day, Debo's in big collisions everywhere, which I thought was kind of bullshit until I saw Debo get chased down from behind and somehow end up in a head-to-head collision. I'd never seen that before. He ended up in a head-to-head collision in the Seahawks game.
Well, him and Kittle are the same. He instigated that collision. He lowered his shoulder and said, "I'm going to fuck you up," and it's the reason we love that dude.
Yeah. But
on that play, as someone around the Niners told me, Debo never should have got the ball. Trey should have kept. He made the wrong decision. Now,
did he?
That's where the instincts come in. Debo made 4 people miss. The guy right at the line of scrimmage, and then 3 more defenders on the second level.
He's a very good running back.
He's an elite running back.
You could argue that Kyle's made the same decision with Trey that he's made with Debo. Losing Debo would be devastating. Putting him in harm's way is bad, but this is what I have to do. At the end of the day, it actually feels like Debo runs the ball more than he actually does. I think he had, 3 or 4 carries in that game the other day? I got to double check here.
Well, because he still gets like bubble screens and stuff, so he gets the ball a lot behind the line of scrimmage, swing routes. He lines up in the backfield sometimes when he doesn't even get the ball. Now, they do that with Ray too. I mean, it's part of I watched in the Dolphins. Like, it's part of the modern day version of this whole thing, The Packers can't do it because they don't have players like that.
So Debo had 4 carries.
I've seen Cooper Kupp kind of, run back and kind of run around. It's not you're right. It's they end violently, so it feels powerful when he runs.
And Trey's had some violent endings to his runs.
Here's the thing, though. I hear what you're saying about the running. So let's cut the runs in half and those equal passes.
What's his percentage?
Yeah, if they don't feel like, because people throw deep. Mahomes and Josh Allen don't throw deep every play. The majority of throws, I would say, are within 15 yards and in, which they don't feel he's accurate at all on. And one thing I asked, like, what have the last couple of weeks been like at practice? Asked someone. They said very up and down. And it just goes to running basic stuff. And obviously that's the hard part about the runs at practice. Like, at least a pass at practice. Like, if we run a full speed, whatever, an out route or a dig route or just something, it is between the quarterback, the steps, and the wide receiver. Like, that is the route, right? That is the play. The run play is nowhere near the same, correct? Because you're not tackling. It's just completely different. At least the route, I can just go, would this work or not? Because the passing game is much, and it's like, hey, there's not corner one-on-one coverage. Just each kind of tackle fall down. It's much more transferable than the run game. And I think in your mind, you go, this is what this guy's done before. He's comfortable with it. I hear you. He does not look comfortable with it, but what else were they going to do? Because we just saw when they score, and this is what I keep getting back to, when they score 10 points and the passing offense looked like a joke. Well, it was a driving rain monsoon. Fields made plays in it, man. He just did.
I mean, it was his percentage at the end of the day. Not great, I don't think.
But I'm just saying he pulled a couple plays, and you're like, well, broken plays out of his butt. Well,
he did.
And that's why we're drafting these guys high.
I think it's fair to say that Bears game is if we had 17 games, we'd throw that game out statistically. Right. We just don't have 17 games. We got 4 starts from Trey. Right.
I agree to a point. Ultimately, 10 points against one of the worst teams in the league.
I get it. I do understand it. But I do think you could easily make the case that even though clearly Kyle's argument was like, our best chance to win is to use Trey as a runner, which I understand. I don't think it's crazy. But I also think you could make the point that were you going to really be a championship team? Trey is not the runner that you use Colin, right? That Colin is. Were you going to be a championship level team, or was your best chance to try and get him up to speed as a thrower as quickly as possible?
I think we can
Not that you can't do both. I mean, you can get him up to speed as a thrower while also running him.
Listen, we're arguing this.
Yeah.
Not you and I, but I'm just saying.
Oh, we are. I'm just trying to be fair to the whole conversation.
This is just an ongoing conversation. I think the only thing that actually matters is the coach did not believe in this guy. We saw it last year, and we started seeing it again this year. Correct? And that to me, I think we need to do a better job of ask why. Like why? Yeah. It's like because everyone's like, have him throw more. Why doesn't Kyle Shanahan? People keep fucking acting like this guy's the village idiot. We all acknowledge he's one of the best offensive coordinators in the league and has been. His own players say that. They've had a ton of success, won 4 playoff games in 3 years, yet he is not comfortable with having him throw short routes, intermediate routes. What about the Texans game? Yeah, when he hit one big play that Kyle schemed up for Debo over the middle, they were down 7-3 at halftime to a 4-win team. They were getting embarrassed. Like it was a problem. He made some plays in the second half, but people act like he threw 4 or 5 touchdowns in that game. He did not. I wish this guy was good. I wanted him to be awesome, but for whatever reason, the head coach did not believe in him. Did not. Why? It's
well, because I mean, let's also acknowledge the head coach.
When I say didn't believe in him,
doesn't believe in Jimmy at the end of the first half of the Super Bowl against the Chiefs.
But it's understandable. Like Jimmy's got limitations.
Yeah, but we had a lot more game data on Jimmy. I think let's not ignore the fact that we all agreed last year that the number one thing Trey Lance needs to do is play in football games, right? These practices that we went to, and he did some great stuff, and he did some highly questionable stuff. No one can hit him. No one can tackle him.
I just don't know why more rumors about like an unnamed player like thinks we should let it rip with Trey. We're not like it's kind of weird. None of that stuff ever happened.
That players weren't. Well, I mean, nothing gets rumored when it comes to the Niners for the most part.
Yeah, but I mean, a lot of rumors have been coming out about the Jimmy thing for about a month now.
What rumors about the Jimmy thing?
Like that they'd be better off with Jimmy Garoppolo? That's kind of been a running theme.
Yeah, I mean, a lot that rumors came out Sunday when Silver wrote it.
I feel like that. Weren't we talking about that in camp?
There was a story that one player said something in the offseason to somebody. I wouldn't say there were. I mean, we were all kind of wondering, do they feel that way? I don't think there were like an unnamed Niner player week 1 of camp thinks they'd be better with Jimmy. I don't think we quite had that. I think we were all thinking like certainly that's a reasonable thing for people to think, right? I'm just saying one of the reasons Kyle may not have believed in Trey is because Trey didn't have enough time to really prove to Kyle that he was worthy of belief. I'm just trying to keep it as like I think we can be as conservative as possible and still reach the same conclusion without saying, Kyle definitely didn't believe in the guy. Well, but I agree. I mean, I go back
from a play calling standpoint.
Someone could go check my tweet, the timing of my tweet, like right after Trey got hurt. Like he did believe his best chance to win was to run him. More than other quarterbacks have been run before, right? Yes. He did believe that. And I think part of his calculation was the risk is worth the reward because I think this is the only way to win. Now, here's the one other thing I'll say before you jump back in is we don't have proof that Kyle is right about that because Trey only played 2 games. We don't have proof that Kyle was right that this was the only way to win with Trey. I do understand why he felt that way, but we don't have proof that he's right about that.
Facts. And I'll be the first to say coaches get things wrong. But my point is, he did not believe in him, and it didn't feel like there was a mutiny coming of the group saying, like, this guy's getting screwed, i.e. the team. I think felt like the team was in agreement with Kyle, like, we got to kind of ease this thing in. And using the Jalen Hurts example is like, it's worked for the other team of, like, run heavy. Now, like you said, he's a much better runner. We're finding out quickly, like, Trey is a hesitant, unsure runner. So that my whole point is, like, then what does he do well? Inaccurate quarterback and not a good runner. It was trending like there were some question marks.
Well, look, and I would even say a lot of people went to camp and watched a bunch of Trey Lance throws. You, me, a lot of people, the people that cover the team every day, fans were there. Go back and watch all the videos we did from camp if you want, or go back and watch some of the stuff we said last year. Some of the post-camp videos were us saying, oh my God, he made some great plays today. And there were plenty of post-camp videos and post-game videos from last year of us saying, boy, this is not ideal. There are some things they're going to have to figure out here, right? And If he wasn't hurt, maybe he would have had 17 games to figure it out. If Jimmy wasn't here and Trey wasn't hurt, we would have had a full season of watching it. But we don't get that. Right.
Well, one conclusion I think you and I came to yesterday, and we talked about this before we hopped on today. Most people were in agreement universally that, like, God, this is an incredible spot to land into. And I would say for the most part, if you're
Did you
just
think that?
Yeah. But I underestimated how big a project, like how hard it is for a project. And this would have been the same for Josh Allen on a team whose expectations is to win playoff games. I think that is absolutely the wrong spot to be in. Now, I'm in Mac Jones would have been an easier fit, though under no circumstances can you draft Mac Jones. So you got to draft this guy. But then there's the question of, like, Jimmy Garoppolo is a better player right now than Trey Lance. He just is. I mean, the players all know it. The coach knows it. Most people not on Twitter.com know it. But, like, it's because they're trying to win this week in Denver, because they're trying to win next week with the Rams. Now, in 3 years, obviously, the guy with more talent, in theory, can improve and become a really good player. But good teams don't have the time to figure it out and potentially go 7-10 because he's completely over his head. It's really, really difficult to have, like, Kenny Pickett this year. It's like, well, he's played 5 years, whatever. Honestly, the Steelers are insane. Just put him in, see if he's got something. He's actually ready to go. He's taking a couple of snaps. Maybe he's not good enough. Who knows? But at least experience-wise, he might be ready. Like, it's hard to have a project with a team that's this good. And it was, I think, universally thought of the other way. And now it was easy to see, like, yeah, this was going to be a problem. Because you know what? 19-10. We just saw it week 1. 19-10. Dwelly wide fucking open, airmail. Now Jimmy does that too, but it's just that is just not acceptable. It was.
I don't think this is about. I think to make it about the Bears game is a mistake.
I know, but my point is, what that symbolizes a team. You're a 7-point favorite. They're one of the worst teams in the league. You should kick their ass, and you lose 19-10, and everyone's.
But
furious.
they've lost that game before without Trey Lance. Jimmy's lost some version of that game before.
100%, but it's different when the guy has a little equity and a guy like, could we just lose a lot of these games?
But it's not proof that they were going to lose those games.
100. No one's saying this. It's all unknown.
We could end up in a playoff game with Jimmy Garoppolo this year, where all of a sudden they need the thing that Trey Lance has, right?
Guy could happen this week.
We could watch them play a game and go, "Oh my God."
This is independent from Jimmy's, like, talent. This is more based on, like, could they go, like, 3 wins on the road this year? Because Trey is just completely overwhelmed.
We should remove Jimmy from it. That's right. Because Jimmy didn't just take his job. Trey got hurt, and that's why Jimmy Garoppolo was playing. Trey Lance didn't get benched. So let's remove Jimmy from it for a second. There was development that had to happen. I don't think that's debatable. I think that's debatable. Although Wheelie on the stream says we need a third white guy and a snapback to settle this debate. That's a very funny comment. If you're listening to the podcast, both snapbacks backwards. Actually, we're both wearing white after Labor Day. Never subscribed to that. But you go back to the what I said earlier, because somebody tagged us in a Josh Allen video today of Josh Allen throwing the ball all over the place his rookie year. And I went last week before this game and watched Josh Allen's first start and Patrick Mahomes' week 1 start, his first year that he took over after Alex Smith, not the week 17 game. And they looked different in that game. They looked different. Patrick Mahomes, they both actually looked, I thought Mahomes looked comfortable. He just had Tyreek Hill to get the ball to. I actually thought Josh Allen looked reasonably comfortable, but he was missing throws all over the place. Just fucking rockets. Just like a 2-year-old trying to learn how to pee, just missing the seat left and right. It was all spraying all over the place. So he has gotten better. But what's funny is, Josh right now is like 78% or something. He was 63 last year. It's not like Josh Allen was one of the 10 most accurate throwers in the league last season.
There was a lot of touchdowns,
but his team was not supposed to be good. They were 6-10, right?
Yeah.
It didn't matter. Like, he's throwing lasers all over the place. It didn't matter. They were bad. Their thing was, we have to just develop this guy. We will fail with him. No one's getting fired. Sean McDermott's not getting fired. The OC's not getting fired. No one's getting fired over Josh Allen year 1. Brandon Beane's not getting fired. The point is, we're going to invest now. You're going to take, this is what you do with young quarterbacks. For the most part, you take 1 step back to take 2 steps forward. That's what you do. Well, this franchise was not prepared to take 1 step back to find out if Trey was going to be 2 steps forward.
I think they were hoping
That's
he
what
would
made it
be
hard. Actually, they were
further.
prepared to do it. They were going to let Jimmy go, and that's what they were going to do.
But I also think they were hoping he'd be a little further along in the games. And I don't think the coach. You're right. It's an unknown. The coach feels that he's not. I think it's supported, and I think it's supported by the players. Which that sometimes it's a split there.
We agree on this. I think it is supported by a lot of what we've seen since Trey got hurt. I think it's supported by what we saw with our own eyes. Yeah, my debate here today is not that Jimmy doesn't make them a better team today. It's simply, I do think we have to acknowledge that running him that many times put him in harm's way. Now, the counter to that, which is the point you're making, and the point I made on Twitter the other day, so I'm not even on the opposite side of this, is that might have been the best way for them to win. And Kyle's play calling tells us that's what he thought. Doesn't make him right, but that's what it tells us. Now, here's what I would say to Kyle. It's like, Kyle, don't do it with Jimmy on the goal line unless it's going to be a sneak. Stop.
Yeah, I would also say, if Trey is not a confident runner, I think we would have to immediately, like if he's just going to be an average to below average runner, which he kind of look like, we are going to have to dramatically lower the ceiling on him as a player.
Well, I mean, at the end of the day, what you want is not the guy whose best skill is running the football.
No, but his running skill was pretty average. And most of the great players who are big-time athletes dominate both.
But it's part of what I loved about him coming out is that I felt like he didn't look to run. He looked to throw. That's what I wanted. As a
but his runs, he was a good runner.
No. I understand. I'm just saying, like, it was a plus to me that him running the ball wasn't, his athleticism to get out of trouble. Like, that's ideal. Jimmy, how many times Jimmy just can't get out of it? It's not about Jimmy. You want a guy that can get out of it, or you just want a guy that gets rid of the football. You know what was weird? I thought this, and I didn't say this Sunday, and I'm like, well, maybe I didn't really. I got to watch the game again, that type of thing. I thought the offensive line blocked better. And then I had the game. Sunday Night Football was on, and then I see our guy Feldy with Dante Whitner on after Sunday Night Football on NBC. Yeah. And Dante's like, I thought the offensive line blocked better today. It just made me wonder, something to watch for. This isn't a take of mine, but is the ball coming out faster with Garoppolo, and does that make the offensive line look better?
Always a knock with Russ, right? Everyone shits on their offensive line. He's doing pirouettes and 360s back there. Again, I'm not comparing the two situations, but it's just I think sometimes running quarterbacks can be a challenge for an offensive line.
It can be. I remember with
quarterbacks.
Remember there was the play we were doing a radio show. Hard to remember, but I think Joe Staley was on. Maybe it was post Colin. Remember there was a play where Joe Staley gave up a sack.
It was Colin against the Falcons.
But was Colin still? It must have been post Colin that we did the interview with Staley. Maybe it wasn't.
It was Colin's play.
It was what?
It was Colin that got sacked.
No. What I'm saying is, was it after Colin Kaepernick was gone that we had this conversation with Staley?
No, it was the day after the game.
And he gave up a sack. But the problem was, you asked Staley about it. Colin didn't step up in the pocket. So Staley's blocking this guy back. And Colin's going back. And Staley doesn't think the quarterback's there. Now, you can go also find our takes on, Trey and this offensive line. I thought this offensive line would have some problems, and it'd be good that Trey Lance was the quarterback because of his mobility. So whatever. I took us off track there because of just a thought. But, maybe we know that Jimmy Garoppolo is not the ideal quarterback. That we know. And we know that Trey Lance had a lot of the physical traits that you want. But the two best quarterbacks...
Not a soul is saying that Jimmy Garoppolo is like some star. It's just that currently, whether you're Richard Sherman, whether you're Sean Payton, he's currently better than this version of Trey Lance in 2022 pre-ankle injury. That's all anyone's saying. I think that's... we need to put it... I think a lot of people that are getting mad, people are acting like Jimmy is everyone's excited that like Jimmy's going to be some savior, like he's some dominant player. No, people I think his own team thinks he'll be a savior just because he's better than what they had playing quarterback, who they feel just was handed the job because he was drafted high, not because he earned the job, because he would not beat this guy out, which we've all acknowledged is a fact.
Yeah, and we've also acknowledged that for them to have any chance with Trey, he would have to play to get better. Right?
Exactly.
Like the odds of Trey Lance becoming a All-Pro are better than Jimmy Garoppolo's odds.
And I think a lot of people, including myself, thought that they'd get to a 10 or 11 wins just with him. And I changed that opinion through training camp and definitely throughout the way that I saw the coach. Ultimately, it was the way the coach was going to use him. Like, he wasn't going to pivot and just start running some 4 wide with Trey and shotgun. Like, that wasn't coming.
I still thought they could, be a 10-win team with Trey, but it was going to have to kind of be that way, and that made me uncomfortable for his livelihood and for the big picture future.
Maybe you could order a butcher box.
That's John's way of saying it's time to get to an ad. And he's right. We actually overdue for it. Let's tell the people, John, about our friends, butcherbox.com/ham, code ham. Get you free chicken in every order for a year. That's 2 pounds. A free chicken, free range organic chicken breast at every order when you sign up at butcherbox.com/ham and use the code ham.
Yep, guy, enjoy a range of high-quality cuts that are hard to come by at the grocery store at an amazing value, exclusive member deals so you can save big on your favorite cuts, recipe inspirations. You and I have done it. We've gotten beef. Obviously, you get free chicken in this order. You get steaks, ribs. I think one time they sent us some lobster and shrimp. Just go check it out. You can personalize all your boxes, and can't recommend it enough. It's fantastic.
That's right. They did send us lobster. So go get it right now. Take chicken breasts off your grocery list. ButcherBox is offering our listeners an incredible deal they've never offered before, which is free chicken for a year, 2 pounds of free range organic chicken breast for free in every order. When you sign up at butcherbox.com/ham and use the code ham, claim this deal at butcherbox.com/ham and use the code ham. We're also sponsored by our friends at Sleep Number. Sleepnumber.com. Sleepnumber.com/ham. Whether you're a 40, you like the mattress a little softer like John, a little firmer like me at 55. Sleepnumber.com/ham. Choose proven quality sleep because every day starts the night before.
Yep, guys. Sleep comfortably all night. Create bedtime bliss. Dim the lights. Turn the television off. Prioritize your schedule. Consistency in sleep. You can't one night go to bed at 9:30. Next night go to bed at 1. Next night go to bed at 11. Then go to bed. That's when you get up and down. That's when you need 17 iced coffees. But when you just have a consistent routine, I go to bed at 10. I get up at 6:30. And you get in a rhythm with your Sleep Number bed. The rest is history. Society's easy to dominate.
Sleep IQ sleepers with kids attain an average of 30 more minutes of restful sleep during the weekend compared to the weekdays. And you can get about 28 more minutes of restful sleep per night when you use your 360 smart bed technology. So that's 170 hours per year, according to PFF. Why choose proven quality sleep from Sleep Number? Because every great day starts the night before. Discover sleep offers now and for a limited time at your local Sleep Number store, or just go to sleepnumber.com/ham.
Little breaking news. Saw Schefter just tweet that Marlon Mack has been signed to the team, and he'll be on the 53-man roster, no longer practice squad guy. So
good luck to him this week.
I'd go over/under games for Marlon Mack gets hurt at about 3.5. That feels high.
I would take the under, considering we're averaging 1 injured running back a game, John. Not ideal when you really, not to get off Marlon Mack, but I mean, so far, 2 weeks into an NFL season, we've got Jimmy Ward, George Kittle, the quarterback, and 2 running backs injured.
Yeah, it's on a torrid pace, it feels like.
As somebody said in the chat yesterday, it was a comment I didn't get to but thought about afterwards. That's what you get when you build a stadium on a Native American burial ground, which actually it wasn't. I did the research after the fact. I'm like, oh, is that true? That part's not true, but apparently there was something. I don't know. I didn't go any further. But Marlon Mack.
Allegiant or the Levi's?
The Levi's.
Oh, okay.
Allegiant was obviously not, because Mark Davis.
Champion. Well, it's T-Mobile Arena, I think, guy.
T-Mobile. T-Mobile's a good spot.
He brought a championship. Mark Davis, when you think Mark Davis, I want you to think championships.
I've worked with Kelsey Plum before. She's awesome. So congrats to the Aces, John. Marlon Mack.
Yeah, just wanted to share that. No deep thought beside
Ty Davis Price got hurt. I mean, that's the deep thought.
Yeah, I think you kind of hit it. Like this is not sustainable. I mean, they've had a dude tear his MCL and then a guy have a high ankle sprain in back-to-back weeks, which are their 1 and 2 running back. That's the problem. I mean, it just is. Because I was pretty bullish on, I guess Ty Davis Price technically is their third running back if Wilson's their second, but this pace,
became their second.
Yeah, it's a problem. Now, who does look a lot better, I would say, clearly outside of Chicago, he moved a lot faster last week, and Denver haven't checked the weather, but I'm going to assume no rain.
Well, I think it means more runs for Debo, or like a continuation, maybe not more, but a continuation.
Well, that ain't slowing down. I also think it could help dramatically. There were reports last week that George was kind of begging to play. I guess I don't know why, but I would be a little more bullish. I think we've kind of circled this. When George originally got hurt, we're like, I'm already the first 2 weeks. You just kind of hopefully gets back for Denver. I don't know why. I would just take an educated guess. He's going to want to play in this game, right?
Sunday Night Football. It was closer last week, yeah.
That would be a nice addition. Doesn't that help the team out a little bit? Like take off the running. He just short little passes to George Kittle.
Yep. Sean on the stream says, I don't know how you two could watch the 2-4 season start last year and then make sweeping pronouncements about Trey's ceiling coming off of 5 quarters in practice. It's hard to even know Kyle's plan. Pronouncements, whatever you want to call it, our opinions are not about Trey's ceiling. It's about what was the floor this year. And I think watching camp, we became a little concerned. And again, our evidence is there, like it's on paper. We thought the ceiling that was very high, but that the floor might be a little lower than we had hoped. And that's not our take yesterday. That was our take, 2 months ago. That it's not about his ceiling. His ceiling is not the question, right?
No.
The question is like, how long would it take you to get to his ceiling? Could you win while trying to get to his ceiling? Before we get to one more, another conversation kind of offshoot of this, let me just hit a couple people who hit us with a super chat. John, that Niner guy says, do you guys think it's interesting that Kyle Shanahan said Trey's done for the year, but the timetable on the surgery was 10 to 12 weeks? Maybe just the initial shock of the moment. I think people are wondering, like, is Trey going to be available before the season's over and healthy?
Well, I saw a doctor today say that they thought he would be back before the season ended.
His doctor or just a doctor?
Yeah, I just saw a headline. I didn't take it that seriously because I think it was universally kind of reported just by not even the Niners that like this is season-ending surgery. Doesn't feel like Trey's pushing back. Like, see you guys in a couple months.
Right.
Pretty major. Yeah. This is a pretty major injury. Like, let's just worry about his full recovery and health before we worry about a return. That to me, his ankle. I know yesterday it was like on the bright side, no compound fracture. Like
it's not Dak's injury.
It was not Dak's injury, but his ankle was pointing the other way. I would say before Dak's injury, the injury in the National Football League, I think Gordon Hayward had it, but I think he was compound fracture too, if I remember correctly. When your ankle is sticking the wrong way, that is an immediate but Paul too was compound. Yeah. To me, compound is devastating. You're hoping the guy can play sports again. I think the ankle injury pointing the other way of the leg is most people just go like, that's a season ender, right? I mean, it's a major, major reconstruction. Dislocation, break, pointing the other way. Like I didn't go to medical school here, but I've watched enough sports to think like, I'm not even thinking about that. I think the number one key is for this guy just to get to full health. 100%, you're not going to be like, well, 2 months, he's 80%. Like, he's the backup quarterback now. Like, what? Yeah. What are we doing then? This whole thing was putting him in harm's way. Now we're hopefully get him at the end of the season. Like, this is where I get people talk. I know he's not, but people kind of talk both sides of their mouth on all this stuff.
Well, but I think people are saying, if he were totally healthy by the end of the year, would he be back in some capacity?
Be a pretty miraculous recovery, correct?
Have him just like run the ball a few times? You wouldn't do that.
No.
Steve says, so 3 firsts and a third was worth an inaccurate and non-instinctual runner. Trading for number 3 months in advance, and Kyle can't figure that out. What was the plan? Draft potential and hope?
I celebrated it.
I did too, but the plan might have been to draft potential to trade up just to get somebody, right?
Which they've said over and over, yeah.
Which you could absolutely say, well, that's not an ideal operation, right?
Pretty risky.
Single guy. Because what if you do the evaluation and you don't love any of them?
When do most trade up happens? When do most trade up happens?
When you love draft day.
And on draft night.
When did the Jets trade up to 3?
Early, and a lot of people thought it was kind of nuts.
They didn't end up with
They took Sam
franchise
Darnold
quarterback
over Josh Allen and Lamar. That's probably they like
and
a redo on
they
that.
had the time. And who knows if Justin Fields turns out to be great? We'll be like you traded up just so you could have the time to evaluate, and you evaluated incorrectly. Look, that's a whole other conversation that there might be very fair criticism for the Niners on.
Listen, I 100% supported the move of moving up and taking a huge swing. Now, we have said over and over, now you can argue the plan was a little, probably not ideal looking back. And I think part of it was pretty clear. Kyle leaned with Mack and the personnel people, as I would as well. And I did at the time, like, you got to take one of these other two guys. And Adam Peters and John Lynch could, I don't know if they quote unquote talked him out of it, but definitely influence. We cannot take Mac Jones, who is a turnover machine right now, 15 picks through 19 games.
Playmakers make plays, John.
So you got to take Justin Fields or Trey Lance. Now, just because you take one of those guys, never guarantee that they were going to be, Josh Allen or Lamar Jackson. That's just a fact, right? Just because you get drafted high does not mean. And here's the other thing. On the bright side, it sucks. 3 first-round picks. 2 of them are already gone. So I think the way it's talked about, like, still don't have a first-round pick like the Rams for the next 4 years. No, you just got one more year of this after this season.
One of them was Mike Parsons. Not that they would have taken him, but
the other guy was Cole Strange.
Niners are like, well, the Rams trade all their picks and it works out fine. So what difference does it make?
If they could redo it, would they have just traded up to take Micah Parsons?
It's a funny question. Maybe.
Micah and Nick Bosa would be a pretty dominant combo.
Yeah, they would neither be able to win. God, I mean,
they would dominate, man.
Is Nick going to be like who's a guy that like never won because he,
Russell never got a vote and pisses him off.
Russell's never gotten a vote. I'm just saying, like, is Micah just going to win Defensive Player of the Year for like 5 straight years? It'll be like Nick Bosa never won one. It's like, well, he just, John Stockton and Karl Malone. He just happened to be fighting with MJ for him.
Yeah, watching the Cowboys, clearly offensively, they're not the most potent team with Dak or Cooper Rush. Micah Parsons, like, if you tell me that he ends up with 20 sacks and however many TFLs, and it's like, they went 9-8 and the defense carried them and it was this Micah Parsons, I'd be like, I can't really argue. Like, I watched the Bengal game and it was like, I love Nick Bosa. And I think Nick Bosa is an elite player and a defensive player of the year type guy, just like Mike is. But if you tell me like they're even and one guy gets in the other, like, it's hard to complain, It's like Khalil Mack or Aaron Donald. Remember that, like, in their peaks?
Yeah.
Aaron's still kind of peaking, but I think I didn't watch one snap of the Rams last week.
Skyscraper says, don't need Parsons. We have Drake Jackson. Great take.
Made a sweet play. Do you know who could use Drake Jackson?
Huh?
Do you know who could use Drake Jackson?
Who?
Trojans. Like, if they had Drake
USC.
Jackson, I'd be like, is this a national championship contender?
I know. I looked it up, John. They've scored a touchdown on 11 of their 14 first half drives, 79%. Pretty good. USC's offense.
Is the dude that came over with Caleb Williams, is he an underclassman as well, like not draft eligible? Like,
I think he was a true freshman last year, so I think he's a true sophomore this year.
So they're just going to Addison will go to the draft, but they'll get those two guys back, the quarterback and the star receiver, which I'm sure they'll add another sweet wide receiver with them.
Right.
They'll be fine.
Yeah.
Fight on.
Good job.
Pretty fun to watch them play. I'm not going to lie.
LR. They in another battle, John. Last week, 2 guests through friends of the. What'd you say? How'd you say it earlier? Show friends. 2 show friends.
Did you see Lincoln when he was? I posted on Instagram. Julie Hayner, Jake's mom, posted the video of Jake crutching out. Lincoln comes over, hug, rub on the head, whispers in the air, another rub on the head, like to respect between 2 elite competitors.
Well, the same again this week because Jonathan Smith, show friend, Lincoln Riley, show friend, facing off.
In a weird way, it would be a pretty incredible win for Jonathan, but like, I guess if USC made the playoffs, they would probably not do great, would be my thing. They feel like one of those teams like this. Lincoln's going to make it at USC several times. This will probably be one of his worst teams in a weird way. Would you agree with that?
Yeah.
top to bottom. Now Caleb, who knows, might be his best quarterback for the next 5
It might
years.
be that it's a Blitnikoff winner, Heisman candidate. He might have 2 Heisman candidates in his receiver and his quarterback.
Do you think the playoff committee would complain if it was like 1-4 Georgia SC?
As you like to say, no.
Do you think SC could score 20 points on Georgia?
Yeah. I'm confident.
You think they can play with them?
I think I think their offense is just fucking good.
Clearly.
I mean, really good.
I mean, Bama played with them twice, right?
Yeah,
Could they slow them down? I don't know.
No. Could USC slow Georgia down?
Like, what would the spread be on that game, you think? Georgia by 10?
Neutral. Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. 8.5. Because USC might be, we'll see if they keep it up. But right now, they're one of the top. They're like, one of the number one. Last week, they were the number one scoring offense in the league, and then they only scored 45 or whatever it was, 42. So it went down. But
something to keep an eye on.
Yeah. All right. So one other thing we want to talk about is this big article, ESPN.com by Tim Kewen. Somebody taught me how to say it the other day. And so Tim, shout out. Tim Kewen and Nick Wagoner. And let's read, John. There's a lot to read here, but here we go. During an early August conversation regarding the roster, Lynch engaged Shanahan on the topic of QB depth. And he said, what about Jimmy? If he could agree to a significant salary cut, it would work for all sides. Shanahan scoffed at the idea, not because he didn't like it, but because he didn't think Garoppolo would agree to both a pay cut and a backup role. He agreed and to mention it to Garoppolo, whose reaction was understandable and expected. He and his representatives wanted to wait and see what else materialized, but Shanahan came away encouraged. Garoppolo didn't shut the door completely.
When you read early August, I go, guy, early August. What's the date that pops into your head?
August 1st? What do you mean?
Well, I'm just saying, like, when someone says early August, like, do you think like August 12th, or do you think August like 4th, or do you think like,
that early August means like first to me, a month's only 4 weeks long. So, the middle of week 2 is now the middle of the month. So it means, the first 10 days, I think is what that 12 days.
Well, you and I attended the first padded practice for the 49ers. And the first padded practice for the Niners was July 29th, 30th, was August 1st on a Monday. Remember? It was a Monday.
Yep.
And obviously they had practice. You and I, we go to pads. Once camp starts, like I ain't doing the OTA style that first couple days. When the pads come on, we'll be there. The NFL, new rules, CBA. So you got to wait a couple days. Pads come on August 1st. And let's just pick a arbitrary, the August 4th, because remember they practice for a couple days and then they get a day off, like all these different rules. So I would imagine on the day off, players are off. Coaches are doing a lot of like preparing for the next stretch of padded practices. Also, what happens there, in my experience, personnel meetings, GM, coaching staff, like you see in Hard Knocks, right? You get around that long ass table, wherever it is, and you start going position by position. And then after that, I watched on Hard Knocks, they did that. And then Dan goes to his coaching staff, like, I forget their GM's name, but he's like, we're meeting now. You guys are out. See you guys later. Talk soon. Right. So you have group conversations that then morphs into the decision maker conversations. My theory when I read this is Kyle was not happy because early on in camp, Trey was all over the map. That was well reported. You and I witnessed that. It was just balls kind of flying all over the place. If I remember correctly, his couple of days that were really good back to back were like the 10th and the 11th, or it was a couple days before their game. Remember?
Well, I can tell you, I'm looking back at like our video history, and I can kind of tell you remember some of what on August 2nd we did a video called Trey Lance showing off his arm. So we had a good day that day, or at least made a couple of big throws. On August 3rd, we did a video, Trey Lance and Deebo Samuel still working on their chemistry. Here's the one that stands out to me. On August 5th, we did a video called Keep Jimmy Garoppolo Away from the Rams. Remember there was some news.
Elbow.
Yeah. And I wonder if maybe, around that time there was some conversation like, Kyle, what if we could keep him from going to the Rams? Well, what would we be willing to do? Would we want him as a backup if it meant he doesn't go to the Rams? Because him on the Browns or him on the Texans, who cares?
That's a legitimate conversation, and we had it, and it makes sense. And I'm sure they were having that conversation consistently, as it was well documented by people talking about the league.
August 9th, we did a video called Trey Lance's Good Day at Niners Camp.
Yeah, and I remember that was an explosive good day, like the best day that he had over a 8-day stretch that you and I had attended. It actually wasn't 8 practices because they got a couple days off, but 5 or 6 practices. My theory is pretty simple, is that early on with him throwing it all over the map in pads, Kyle's edgy. You know why? Head coaches are just naturally edgy, and it's his offense. And John, who has influenced this pick, and rightfully so, I support the influence of the pick, wants his coach to feel better. So he's coming to him for quarterback depth. Why is they talking about quarterback depth? You could say, well, it's because Sudfeld and Brock are his backups. And I'd say, well, look around the league. I mean, Sudfeld is a backup right now. Like, that's what are you going to do? Like, you're going to call one of the McCowns, 43, coaching high school football in Georgia? Like, what are your options? Is it him trying to, like, hey, Kyle, if this doesn't work out, why don't we try to convince this guy to be our backup? And Kyle at first pissed off just in general, not necessarily at Jimmy or just the situation that Trey might not be ready, goes, this is never going to work. He'll never sleeps on it, realize, well, it's worth a shot. And then they attack it. Because this was something that felt like when it happened, when the story broke that Jimmy had resigned, that it kind of come out of nowhere. And clearly one thing we have learned, I remember, I think we talked about it. I read the Albert Breer piece when Jimmy said that we had these conversations middle of camp or early in camp. I think he was talking about this date whenever they had broached it with him, which was probably somewhere between the 5th and the 10th, which is, almost a month before the final cut down and the announcement that Jimmy has resigned. That is there a chance, and I think that you have to admit there was a chance that it was because the head coach was questioning his quarterback's ability to lead them to the playoffs, and John trying to have a positive influence, because a lot of people feel that John Lynch and Adam Peters are a big reason that Trey Lance is on the team, right? And that Kyle wanted Mac Jones, and not that he was talked into it, but just understood, take the swing, that it was not his preference. And ultimately, John Lynch, in a weird way, he could have been down on him, now is kind of a hero because of this situation. That's a potential theory. I'm not saying I would bet.
I don't know if this influences your theory, but remember August 23rd, John Lynch went on radio. I found the Barrows tweet. John Lynch had a long answer when Tolbert asked him what the timeline looks like for the release of Jimmy Garoppolo. And John Lynch said, yeah, I think we're getting pretty close. So they'd had the conversation, felt okay about it. And still by the end of August, maybe
pretty close on releasing or pretty close on a final
releasing. The question was released. I'd have to go back and listen to the audio exactly because I'm with you. My first thought was, wait a second, is he saying we're close to a resolution or close to a release?
Because if he just said pretty close, he could just be meaning pretty close to a resolution.
Yeah, that's what he could be meaning, which could mean, hey, guys, curveball. He's coming back. More from that great ESPN article. Kyle put together his, leadership council. 15 guys.
I kind of ad-libbed it, right? Just called
15 guys, by the way, which is like, more than 25% of the roster. Yeah, but it's 15 guys, John. It's twice as many captains as they have.
Yeah.
Almost.
Or it's like Tom Sula's captains, right?
I saw somebody asked, has any coach gotten off? What podcast was I listening to? Has any coach ever gotten off to a worse 2-game start than the Broncos coach? It's like, you can't say Tom Sula because he was 1-0.
Hey, it's true. All-time winningest coach in the history of the league.
So here's more of
winning percentage.
So here's more of what was written. Once the players had digested the news, Shanahan and Lynch opened the floor for questions. So, by the way, think about this for a second. They're bringing Jimmy Garoppolo back, but they have Trey Lance on the team. They understand that this situation is so bizarre that the two of them, not just Kyle by himself, the two of them get 15 guys in the room to tell them it's happening, and they want their help in helping this situation go smoothly, which at the time made a lot of sense. If you looked at it like This is just going to be weird. There's going to be a lot of noise from the outside. I need you guys to help handle this. But maybe in hindsight, it was them understanding, I know you guys think this other guy, Jimmy, might be the better player today. So let me explain to you how we're going to do this and how important it is for you to be on board. Maybe they understood that, right?
Robbie Gould get an invite to that, you think?
Hard to say. Robbie, I need you to keep Wisnowski in line and Tabor. So there weren't many questions according to players, but one stood out. What happens if, or more like when, Lance struggles? Shanahan's
So Trey not in this meeting.
I would think not. Shanahan's response was simple. He was betting on the guys in the room to make sure that the camaraderie that was built was strong enough to withstand whatever might come from the outside. They then quote something Juszczyk said. Juszczyk was among the 15, Juice, no surprise. Something that he said a few days ago before the injury, which was, it's the best insurance policy you could ever get. And then Aziz Al-Shire said when Kyle first started talking about it, it was crazy that it was even an option to have Jimmy back. I was like everybody else. Nobody thought it was possible. When they said it might happen, we were like, fuck it, let's go.
Was that a brag that he was invited to the meeting?
Maybe. I don't think that Aaron Banks was invited to the meeting, but he did get quoted in the article. It didn't really hit us till we saw that first day. It was like, oh shit, Jimmy Garoppolo is taking scout team reps.
Yeah, I mean,
49ers daddy on the stream. Interesting comment. Says, loved how the Niners leadership handled this. Leaking reports the night of Trey's injury. Tyler says, pretty shady not having Trey. Well, I think he's referring to the Silver report. Pretty shady not having Trey there. I don't know what Trey is thinking with all the players and coaches talking about him behind his back.
Well, here's the thing, and this gets back to the scenario is they traded a lot for him. We all know that. But the hay's in the barn. The trade was made. Like, ultimately, this is not a total, like, can you be worried and just consumed with feelings 24/7, 365? Because the majority of every guy, I'm going to assume, I don't know the list, but we know a minimum 10 of them, they got a ton of Pro Bowlers in that room. So, Trey's not, like, on Eric Armstead, on Nick Bosa, on Trent Williams, on Deebo Samuel, on Kyle Juszczyk's level, on Fred Warner, on Jimmy Ward. I mean, these guys have been starting in the league and making plays in playoff games, on the road in December, in must-win games. So in their mind, this notion that Trey's not there, like, he shouldn't be there. And this gets back to he didn't earn the job. Now, a lot of young draft picks don't earn the job. But it's funny, I was watching on Sunday, just watching football, and you just see, like, all these first-round picks, like, just throughout the league over the last several years, right? Like, just a guy, like, watching the Bucs-Saints game, and Devin White's just all over the place. And you realize at one point in time, Devin White was just the 5th pick, walks into a locker room. Now, they weren't good or whatever, probably at the time when they drafted him. They couldn't have been. They were drafted 5th. But he just, a lot of times, just gets to start. Like, Devin White's our middle linebacker. And at first, like, can this guy play? We've heard players forever talk about, like, everyone's trying to feel everyone out early on. This guy, what do they do in Hard Knocks? Rookies go up to the front and say how much money they just signed for, right? I'm Devin White. I'm Trey Lance. And what's your signing bonus? $23 million. Oh! But here's what happens. 2 games in, it's like, holy shit, Devin White's made 25 tackles. He's got a pick 6. It's like, we nailed this pick. This guy's going to help us win. Where Trey, like, he's made a ton of money. He gets drafted really high. But in their mind, like, they've seen all these guys make plays. So to me, there is always a level in sports, just like society, just like you and I have been in a position, no different than a ton of people listening to this, where you've got a new boss and they start kind of flexing their muscles and you realize, is this guy the village idiot? I have no problem if you work for someone, them telling you what to do. But I think the older you get, you realize, like, you kind of got to earn some respect. Like, there has to be some level of, at first you get the benefit of the doubt, but the longer you're around them, like, do you know what you're doing? Because if you don't, I just can't take you seriously. Whether you play, I'm not saying Trey is this, but, like, in football, the only way to truly earn the respect is not be a good guy, carry the pads, be super smart, like, make plays. And you can't make plays if you don't play. So my point is, like, Trey not being in this meeting, of course he's not. He hasn't earned the right to be in the meeting. It would be weird.
What's weird is he was 8th in the voting of captains, but not among the 15 that got into the meeting. But I agree with you.
Could they be lying about that? I'm not.
They could be. I also think it's a locker room filled with good guys who understand voting for the quarterback is just kind of what you do. Like seriously, I think that's.
You think a
probably
lot of if you and I were NFL players and we just had one of those careers where we played in like 7 teams, there have been a lot of votes like, bro, you just got to do it, man. Yeah, it's like check. It's like, Russell? I mean,
you don't want the guy to turn out to be good, and then like, Middlecoff didn't vote for you for captain.
Was there a chance that Broncos, like Bradley Chubb, looks at Justin Simmons like, bro, do I really got to check this guy? Like, I mean, he's our quarterback, but he's like, I got to give him a C. It's got to happen in some teams, right?
100%. Yeah. I think that this article, the meeting, is partly evidence of what you said, that they understood that it was not going to be smooth, right? Because if Kyle Shanahan thought, Jimmy Garoppolo was signed.
In the piece that you just showed, the original part, I think it says that they wanted their opinions, but the decision had already been made.
I cut that part out, but yes, it was not about asking their opinions necessarily. It was about telling them and then talking about, here's what I need from you guys. Here's how we're going to handle it. Jimmy got signed on like the 2nd or 3rd last day of August, right? So it was going to be about 2 weeks, less than 2 weeks, I think, until they played a game on September 11th. So between the signing and Trey debuts as the starting quarterback, they were going to have to survive 2 weeks in which they weren't at practice every day, open to the media. There really weren't going to have to be answering questions, right? It'd be one thing if that had happened February 7th and everyone understood this whole offseason, we're going to have to navigate this. But they really only had to get to week 1 before Trey Lance would be able to step on the field and show everybody he was better than Jimmy Garoppolo. But I think part of this meeting is understanding that it's not going to be obvious week 1 that Trey Lance is better than Jimmy Garoppolo, right? Kyle didn't have this meeting so that everybody could lock arms for 2 weeks. He understood this is going to be a long season, and it's going to be a long run that we're going to be in this together. If it was only going to be 2 weeks because everybody in the room understood Trey had beaten Jimmy out and that's why Jimmy was gone, it wasn't going to matter. I'd be like, guys, in 2 weeks, the world will see what we all know, which is that Trey is better than Jimmy right now today. By the way, the standard isn't, nobody thought, you and I included, that he had to be.
You're replacing Tom Brady or Rodgers here.
Yeah, that too. But I think we all understood there were going to be growing pains. So that's not some revelation. But I think that meeting is evidence that they understood that they had players in their locker room that would be confused by how to handle it. It's easier to handle if you cut bait, the other guy's not around, and we just all move on. But then that's not what they did.
Would you say a defensive player would have been more likely to ask the question than an offensive player? Like Kittle or Debo? Like, wouldn't it be Fred Warner, Jimmy Ward?
Yeah, I do think, there's a lot of guys that play both sides of the ball. But yes, defenses tend to be, this is the Richard Sherman thing, right? Like, did it start because they hated Russell, or did it start because Pete refused to criticize Russell and the defense thought they were getting a disproportionate amount of the criticism when they lost?
Well, because it would make sense if I'm Jimmy Ward or Fred Warner or Eric Armstead, like, okay, Kyle, what happens when he struggles? And we're playing well on this side, and we are a good team. Like, we might be like, what if we are down with making the switch? I mean, that would be a legitimate conversation. I would have, like, what if?
Yeah, I think the answer is one thing you just reminded me. Something Sherman said was like, "Hey, it's not Jimmy against Trey. Like, they're on the same team, right? If this was any other position, none of these debates would happen. It'd be like, well, yeah, we need more than one of you. So that would be probably Kyle's answer is, guys, this is a team. Like, I need you guys because it's not going to be easy. But in the long run, this will be worth it. And they're like, well, cool. In the long run, when I'm going? No, but you're right.
But that's not the way it works at quarterback, right?
It's not. No. Ever.
Clearly, no one thought when they re-signed him that they didn't put like thought into all the dynamics. I think we all just thought like this is a huge risk. Even finding out they did, like, of course you're gonna ask and talk about this. I would imagine they talked about it ad nauseum, and there was a huge element of luck that this played itself out. But like, I do wonder if in that room people already thought, like, if people questioned how ready he was, how ready he was to help them win. Because that group of guys, I mean, we know it's easy to know right off the top of your head, 10 of them, like lock. I mean, there might be a couple like, is Travarius invited? Like, Armstead, Fred Warner, Jimmy Ward, George Kittle, Kyle Juszczyk, Trent Williams, Deebo Samuel. I would guess Brandon Ayuk's also in the room, but he's become buddy-buddy, so who knows? Maybe he's not in the room. But ultimately, Trey found out after that meeting, so I don't know.
I think you just named 9 guys.
I would say yeah, one. I mean, Greenlaw just got an extension. Wouldn't totally shock you. Bosa, I didn't name Bosa. He'd be in the room. So he'd be like, yeah, just do whatever. I'll just make
taking a nap on a beanbag. Okay, that's 11.
And then there would be some just probably,
Lynch?
Yeah, it feels like Kyle likes him. I could see Robbie just out of like, yeah, I got nothing to do, guys. I'll be there. Yeah, you need an extra, I'll stand. Not enough chairs. I'll just be in the back. He's one of those guys like, hey, man, we only got 12 chairs. Like, I'm good, man. I'll stay in the back. Trent's like in the front and center on the big chair. Everyone like moves out of the way for he can sit. But regardless, like obviously they put a lot of thought into this, but you put a lot of thought into this because they knew like they needed this guy. Like you can convince, it's easy to say that it was just great value, right? Like why did it be like if I just, hey, MIDDLEKAUFF just bought a 3rd condo. Why did he do it? Well, shit, it was in Malibu, guy. I got it for $200,000. Just the value, right? You hear that in a lot of just walks of life. It was just great value. Like, why'd you buy? Why do you drive in the new Mercedes? Well, this dude just drove it off the lot. It was used 7,000 miles, $80,000 car. I got it for 38.
All ended up with shitty clothes because it was on sale too.
100%. Like, I mean, there's a million things. You could use any different industry that we purchase for that. I would say this feels like, of course, in a vacuum, great value. Jimmy Garoppolo, $6.5 million, no brainer, right? If you gave everyone the
which I agree with,
no one disputes.
Okay,
but there's of the pie of just the value. I think we all have to acknowledge there was a lot going in there of like, we need a contingency plan, insurance plan, and an injury factor. I mean, this guy hadn't proved he could stay healthy from a running standpoint. I think there's just a lot of parts of the pie that are more than just Jimmy of the pie. Why is Jimmy on this team? The $6.5 million plays a part, but I wonder if it's like under 50%. All the conversations just John, Kyle, maybe even like Fred Warner, Armstead, and Kittle are having.
Yeah, that was part of the meeting too. Now he's going to be making less than Trey, right? That was part of the meeting.
But that goes back to like the Belichick line of thinking that a lot of people copy.
But I do what I keep going back to, my ultimate takeaway from that meeting was they had the meeting not because the media and the fans were going to make it difficult on them, but because Kyle understood that there were differing opinions in that his locker room would wonder whether it's just natural. There's a bunch of guys. Some of them think one quarterback actually might give them a better chance. And Kyle knew that.
Yeah.
Which honestly, that's not me restating starting Trey was the wrong decision. It's too bad, if they don't play that week 1 game in the rain, I'd have a lot easier time with it. Understanding just where things were with Trey. But what has happened has happened. Who the hell knows? Jimmy could get hurt this week, John. That could happen. They could be on Brock Purdy by Tuesday next week.
Which in a vacuum, I would say would just be full on insanity that they've lost like 7 players and multiple quarterbacks in 3 weeks.
Oh, yeah. But this thing has already passed full on insanity.
No, I know, but from an injury, Jimmy,
right.
I would say if Jimmy gets like legitimately hurt this season, they've had an insane season. How many teams in the NFL have lost? One team's lost 1 quarterback, right?
All I know is he better not get hurt running the ball.
No. Kyle kind of snapped and said that Jimmy should have given it, I think. He's like, you got to read the end. When he was
not his thing, John. Not his thing. Don't put him in that position. How about that take?
I don't have a beef with that. I think he was trying to like show some people some stuff.
On the stream, question. WTF am I supposed to make of the Raiders this year? Are they going to be awful? Well, I know this, John. They are playing a must-win game this week. The Raiders and the Titans are both 0-2. It's the only meeting of 0-2 teams in the NFL this weekend. A Belichick tree bowl between Josh McDaniels and Mike Vrabel. So the little research, 5 teams in the history of the NFL have made the playoffs after starting 0-3. The last team to do it was the 2018 Texans, who lost to the Patriots, the Titans, and the Giants, then won 9 games in a row and 11 of 13, and finished 11-5 and made the playoffs. Last year, the Colts almost did it. Remember, the Colts started 0-3 last year. Classic Frank Reich. And
they start slow
and almost made the playoffs. They had to beat the Jags at the end, and instead they got blown out. But that's the history. In full seasons, only 5 teams have ever started 0-3. And guess what's different about this Raider team from the other 5?
I don't know.
Those teams did not have Justin Herbert, Russell Wilson, who's not great, and Patrick Mahomes in their division.
I think that Josh McDaniels, I thought the pressure was all going to be on Derek. And after the first game, he blew that game. If you watch that game, you throw 3 picks, 2 in the second half. There's no way around it. But last week, you have a 23-7 lead and up 20-0 at halftime. Like, I'm sorry. And Derek's not throwing like pick sixes. Like, you got to win that game. Like, Josh McDaniels, listen, because I think through 2 games, you'd be like, well, they lost 1 game in overtime on a fumble 6, and they lost another game where they're going toe-to-toe with clearly one of the more talented teams in the league. Right? Like, they're 0-2, but to me, their 0-2 look a lot different than the Titans, who just got blown out and previous week blew a lead to the Giants. But, like, I don't have much faith in Josh McDaniels, even though I'm bullish on him when he got hired and, like, he's going to – but ultimately, you just got to figure out a way to win games, and he inherited a 10-win team. Like, he inherited – I saw someone forward me, like, in my DMs, like, this is bullshit. McDaniels is saying we have to figure out – we have to learn how to win games. Like, hey, Josh, the core of your team literally won 10 games last year, and I would say one of the games of the year, Week 18, on Sunday Night Football, a game that really they shouldn't have won, and they did. So Derek, Renfro, Crosby, like the core of their team, Colton Miller, literally know how to win games in one of the weirdest, craziest, most batshit seasons we've ever seen. And then the number 1 player that you acquired this offseason, one of the top players in the league, has won 39 games the last 3 years and has been the 1 seed 2 of the 3 of those years. And the other year, I think they were the 2 seed or the 3 seed. They went to the NFC Championship game. So Devontae, all he knows is winning. And Derek and these guys literally just won last season. So I would say, Josh, the only guy who I think needs to prove that they know how to win is you as a head coach, right? You've won as an assistant with Bill running everything, but you as a head coach, Nate's getting a ton of shit because timeouts, punt returners, field goals from 80 yards, clearly. I mean, it's understandable. It's not even one of those like social media's kicking him when he's down. It's just pretty blatant. Like, this is nuts how bad this is. Josh is a little more like they're just losing games, but ultimately in normal kind of fashion. Now, I would say the Cardinal game was pretty crazy. You're up 20-0, a team that kind of feels like they were quitting. How do you not fucking win that game 35-10 or something? Is that the worst loss so far of the season, or is the Dolphins?
You asked me that the other day. The Dolphins, Ravens. The difference, I don't want my inclination to go negative on the Raiders here as a huge lifelong Raider fan, but I
thought you froze.
No, I was just pausing for effect on my comment. But it feels worse because it feels like they're in their season is more in peril than the Ravens, right? But it was bad. I mean, the Ravens were up 35-14 going to the fourth quarter. Like, that's pretty bad.
I agree.
Now maybe the Dolphins, who turns out to be a better team this year? The Dolphins, who wins more games, the Dolphins or the Cardinals?
Listen, that's a devastating loss, but when you're 1-0 losing the second game, no matter how you lose it, it's a little easier to stomach looking back than when you're 0-1 and you're up, all of a sudden you're 0-2. And like you said, you're just some weird shit away from being 0-3 and your season's in shambles.
Their one win is the Jets, but yeah.
They kicked their ass. But my point is, you just win a game. Like, you're 1-1 sounds a lot different than 0-2.
I know they weren't reeling because after the game, Lamar Jackson tweeted like, hat off to the Dolphins. Hell of a game, fellas. That's a confident guy.
Yeah.
Was that game more of a back and forth than just a complete comeback, would you say? I mean,
really. Well, they blew a couple plays and gave up easy touchdowns. I think someone I heard Mike Lombardi say on his podcast they scored 28 points on 22 plays or something. It was just their pace on the comeback was pretty nuts.
Wow.
But one thing that the Ravens were doing is they were scoring on like 2-play drives. So it was like, they weren't wasting. Like, how did they, the time of possession? It's like, well, yeah, Lamar was just busting off like an 80-yard run, and then they'd hit like a 50-yard pass. They were doing the thing of scoring too fast. When you're down like 3 runs and your leadoff hitter hits a home run and you're like, that was bad. No momentum. You'd rather have him hit a double.
Yeah.
That's sometimes what it feels like when you just score too fast, even though the whole point of the game is to keep scoring. But it's like Lamar scored an 80-yard run. Would they have been better off with him just falling down at the 40-yard run and then just having, another 7 plays for 40 yards and wasting some time? Probably.
Ultimate Niner on the stream says Ravens have a tougher division. Case can be made that Miami just needs to steal a game from Buffalo. Well, compare the divisions for a second. Who's the worst team in the 2 divisions?
Patriots?
I would say probably the Jets. It could be the Broncos. Here's the thing with the Broncos.
What division are you comparing? The East?
I'm comparing the AFC. AFC West and AFC East. Denver has played the Seahawks. Not good. Right? And who they just beat?
Houston.
So I haven't looked. Their strength of schedule has to be one of the worst in the league. Honestly, so is the Niners, by the way. But they're like Denver's been playing bad teams. They're going to soon be playing good teams.
Only play 2 games. I mean,
only play 2. My point is just like they might be worse than we even realize because
the eye test is pretty ugly. Yeah.
Yeah. So now the Jets, on the other hand, no one expected anything of, have showed some fight, but same position. Like no one thinks they're great. Okay. Second best and third best teams. Feels like the best team in each division is
really good.
Really good.
Right. I'll say they cancel each other out. Chiefs, Bills cancel each other out.
Yep.
Chargers feels like are better than I would take the Chargers against the Dolphins.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Are the Dolphins better than the Raiders?
I would say if they played right now, the Dolphins would be favored.
Slightly, but the Raiders could win that game. Definitely.
The Raiders could win the game for sure.
Feels like a coin flip. Patriots.
I don't have much faith in the Patriots.
So Raiders are better than the Patriots. Are the Patriots better than Broncos?
I would just Belichick Packett feels like they'd have a chance. Yeah.
So the difference is just that the Ravens
AFC East might be a little bit better than we thought, right? Because I think the Jets. One thing I watched a lot of that Browns game.
Yeah.
Do you know who 2 guys that Garrett Wilson was making plays left and right, and Breece Hall had a couple sweet runs. Like they have drafted a lot of impact players in theory the last couple of years.
Well, the Browns defense is solid. It should be pretty solid, right?
They were up 13 points, 2 minutes left, and they lost.
Well, they scored 2 touchdowns in 90 seconds or whatever it was. Is that what that turned into?
The Jets, yeah, fast. I think there was a moment I didn't watch the whole thing, but I guess Nick Chubb had one of those classic like should have gone down. Didn't.
Yeah, didn't he have one of those last year?
Yeah, I remember Gurley had an all-timer.
I won a fantasy back when I played fantasy because of Gurley.
If he would have scored, you would have lost.
No, Gurley scored accidentally, and I had him, I think, was what happened. Something like that. Remember, Gurley tried to get down. Wasn't that what it was? Gurley accidentally scored.
Didn't they open it up?
Yeah. I think he got like pushed in. He was tiptoeing.
Who was the guy that hit the ground at like the 5?
I thought that was Chubb. I thought Chubb did it right before. No,
he did. Yeah, it feels like he did. Didn't Gurley then do it right a little later before he fell off the cliff?
Gurley's done it twice. Yeah, maybe Gurley's done it twice.
What would you do if the sea parts and you're just at the 4-yard line and they're like,
depends. You go down. Twitter loves you. What's better than that? You score. Do I have a touchdown bonus? Keep the ball. To me, it's like, am I under contract for a few years and doing what's best for the team is what I should do? Hard to say.
Week 16, massive bonus. You're at 7 touchdowns. If you hit 8, it's like $800,000 or something.
I would think I go down because now I'm really a team guy and they pay me just because I'm such a team guy. That would be the move, ideally. So anyway, but the point is like, this is a big game for both of these teams. Now, I don't think the Titans are very good, but the Raiders got to go prove it.
Do Do you just trust them at a 10 a.m. kickoff?
What happens if Josh McDaniels misses the playoffs this year?
Well, would you pick them to be a playoff team right now?
Not throwing 3.
You have faith at 0-2? I think they play the Chiefs week 4.
I do think they've been pretty I do think they've been.
Well, they're talented.
The Cardinals' loss is not good, but they have been right there twice against difficult teams to beat. So I would say they're better than 0-2.
Actually, they got the Broncos. So they go Titans, Broncos, Chiefs, Texans, Saints, Jags, Colts, Broncos, Seattle, Chargers, Rams, Pats, Steelers, Niners, Chiefs. Yeah, they just better. They're just a lot of games that historically, like, Derek can just lose to kind of random teams. Now, they're going to beat a couple teams that they're underdogs against, right? That's just kind of been their MO over the years.
Yeah, but I mean, right now they go to the Saints, like you said. That's tough. They go to the Jags. Who knows?
Yeah.
And
I'm leery of Josh that it's just
I think
you come in and you start talking about winning, and if you're like Max Crosby, like, hey man, I just won, not Super Bowl or anything, but like I know how to win, like to play winning football, because I think it's not reflective of like, do you know how to win the Super Bowl? It's like I know how to play. We played winning football, right?
Yeah.
Like we know how. There's a big difference between like 6-win teams. You guys have no clue, and like, hey man, we won some enormous games down the stretch. I mean, those 2 games, Renfro, Derek, Crosby. Think of, God, they won their last 2 games against the Colts and the Chargers as underdogs. Like, no one thought they were going to do it. They were not a playoff team with a couple games left, and they willed themselves there. If anything, I would say they were one of the crazier stories at the end of the season in the league, right?
I wrote them off November 21st.
Who'd they play?
That was, they lost to the Bengals. Then Thursday Night Football on Thanksgiving, they beat the Cowboys.
They didn't lose to the Bengals, guy. They got destroyed, didn't they?
32-13.
I felt like it looked worse than the score you just read. I was expecting it to be like 45. Yeah, they're in shambles. Bathroom break?
I think we can call it. And good show today. And we can just trust me on that. We'll wrap it here. Everybody else, thanks for hanging. We'll be back soon. We got some picks to make, so a lot going on. We appreciate the conversation, everybody. Carry on, y'all. We miss anybody? Nope, we got everybody in. All right. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for hanging. Later.